Hello and welcome back to Easy English with Mel. My name is Mel and I am so excited to have you back here today because today we're going to do something just a little bit different. Today we are going to talk about Canadian etiquette. That's right, I'm going to give you my top 12 tips to have excellent manners and etiquette here in Canada. Are you ready? Okay, let's go. Number 1, let's talk about arriving on time. In general, Canadians like to be on time. There are some times when it's okay to be a little bit late, but for the most part, arrive on time or a little bit early. This is especially important if you are arriving to a business meeting, a restaurant reservation, where you're going to be meeting other people, or an appointment like at an office, a doctor's office, anything like that. You want to arrive on time and maybe a little bit early. Now, if you have been invited to a social gathering at someone's house or somewhere else, it is absolutely okay to arrive a little bit late, especially if you are not the only one that has been invited. So it is perfectly acceptable to arrive anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes late for that event. If you are the only person or the only family that has been invited to somebody's house, it is still acceptable to arrive a few minutes late. I would stick between the 5 and 10 minutes and not much longer than that, or else they may start to think that you forgot. But it is a nice courtesy to give the host a little bit of extra time to prepare and not to be ringing the bell right on the hour. Speaking about arriving at people's homes, let's go to my tip number 2. When you arrive at someone's home, it is customary to remove your shoes. Yes, in Canada, we take off our shoes once we go into our own home or somebody else's home. Now, the host may say to you, that's okay, you can keep your shoes on, and in which case, then that's perfectly fine. If you feel uncomfortable not having shoes on in the home, it can be okay to bring a pair of indoor shoes or slippers to someone's house, and then you can take off your outdoor wear and put on your indoor shoes. Tip number 3, let's talk about gift giving. Now, there are certain holidays where it is customary to exchange gifts, but that is still usually done just within families and really close friends. But what about if you're going to somebody's home? Do you bring a gift? What do you bring? If you are being invited to someone's home, it is always very nice and appropriate to bring a small gift. Something like a bottle of wine, maybe some flowers, even a box of chocolates. All of those things would be perfectly acceptable and well received by the host. Large gifts or gifts of money would not be very well received. It might create some sort of awkwardness, and it's just not necessary. You don't need to go to a great expense. It is really more just like a symbol of your appreciation for being invited and for them to host you in their home. This brings me to tip number 4. When you are in a social gathering with people that you don't know super well, or you're just starting to get to know them, it's always best to avoid hot topics. So things like politics or religion, usually best to just avoid those conversations altogether unless you know you have the same views and you have discussed these topics before without any issues. On the topic of politics though, Canadians do enjoy talking about American politics. But still keep in mind that Canadians do sometimes have differing views about American politics as well, and conversations about American politics can also get heated here in Canada. Tip number 5, and this one goes for whether you're eating in somebody's home or at a restaurant. You want to make sure that you always remove your hat. That's right, you do not want to be wearing your hat at the dinner table, whether you're in a restaurant or you're in somebody's home eating dinner. Now, this goes for toques, hats, sun hats, all kinds of hats that you would put on when you leave the house and take off when you get home. This does not apply to men or women that wear coverings for religious reasons. So if you wear a hijab, if you wear anything that covers your hair for religious reasons, nobody will think that it is weird or rude that you have that on in a meal. That's perfectly acceptable. But ball caps, those need to come off. And this brings me to another really important point about wearing hats. So this is tip number 6. Always remember to take off your hat and remember to stand whenever you hear the national anthem. So this will happen if you are at a sporting event like a hockey game, which happens a lot here in Canada. You'll hear the national anthem. So don't forget to remove your hat and stand for the singing of O Canada. Tip number 7, always cheer for the home team. Okay, I'm kind of joking about this, but actually it is a good tip and something to learn, that if you are going to a hockey game in whatever city and you do not have a favorite team, your safest bet is to cheer for the home team. If you are going to somebody's house to watch a hockey game and they are all fans of one team and you don't have a preference, the safest thing to do is to cheer for their team. And the reason is that Canadians are really passionate about hockey. So if you are not passionate about a team, it just makes everything easier if you decide to cheer and support the local team. Eventually, after you've lived in Canada for a few years, you may develop a favorite team of your own. And in that case, it's totally fine to cheer for that team. So if you come to my city, you know what team to cheer for. Okay, moving on to tip number 8. In Canada, we typically hold doors open for people. Now I know that this has changed a little bit due to the pandemic and people being more cautious about how close they are to other people, but I've noticed that Canadians are still making an effort to hold the door open for others. We are a fairly polite country and holding doors has always been something that we do. So instead of just walking through the door at the mall and letting it close behind you, take a second to hold it for the person behind you. And you can still obviously do your best to keep social distance, but just remember that it is something that we are used to here, holding doors. And that brings me to tip number 9. Say thank you. So when we are holding doors open for people, quite often there'll be 2 doors, right? So you'll walk through one door and somebody will hold it for you and you'll say thank you. And then there'll be another door right after it and they'll hold it open for you as well. And typically you'll say thanks. So thank you, kind of more enthusiastic for the first one. And then the second one might be a little bit more muted with a quick thanks. It sounds funny, but believe me, this is how it happens here. But saying thank you in Canada is very, very common. We say thank you all the time, as well as you probably heard, we say sorry a lot. It's true, we do say sorry a lot, but I don't think that it's absolutely necessary to say sorry so much. So if there is a reason to say sorry, like if you have done something wrong, then yes, say sorry. If you would like somebody to move, you can say pardon me. Tip number 10 is to learn polite expressions such as pardon me, excuse me. When you're ordering food, you could say I would like, instead of give me number 1, you could say I would like the number 1 combo. All right, so you can use and practice polite expressions because Canada is just by nature a very polite society and country. Tip number 11 is to tip your server. Here in Canada, when you go to a restaurant, we typically will give our server between 15 and 20% depending on the service. So if you had really good, amazing service, you might give them 20% tip, so extra on top of the bill. If you received really poor service, it is acceptable to leave no tip at all. A tip is given to a server when you receive good service. So while it is customary to give your server a tip, it is also expected that you will receive good service. All right, so this brings us to my final tip, tip number 12. And as I was talking about restaurants, I was talking about servers. And that is a word that we use to describe people that work at restaurants. The old terms would have been waiter and waitress, just like flight attendants used to be called stewardesses. So my tip for you is to make sure that while you are studying English, that you are studying up-to-date names and terminology for the people that live in Canada. And this includes our Indigenous population. You might hear different names to describe the people who were and are the first inhabitants of this land. You might hear words such as natives, Native American, Native Indians, Aboriginals, even First Nations is considered an old term as well, even though it is still accepted in some areas. So when talking about the people that were the first inhabitants of this beautiful land, the word we use is Indigenous. One word to describe all of the people that were here first. And that's it. My top 12 tips for customs, courtesies, and etiquette in Canada. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you were able to learn something today. If you have any questions, let me know. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a like, subscribe to my channel so that I know you want to see more videos from me. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you next time.